All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and as of the time of filming this video, I have officially had my top mount turbo kit for 5 years, which is crazy to think about. It feels like yesterday I started getting these parts in the mail, but it's been 5 years and I don't see a lot of people keeping the same setup for that long. So I thought I'd make this video to kind of do a long-term review, talk about my experience, and maybe answer any questions you guys have in case you're considering going this route. So let's go ahead and talk about it, and hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, before we go too deep, I'm curious, just looking at the setup, how much power do you think this car is making? Make your guess now, and of course, I'll tell you guys later on in the video. But let's start off with the actual setup. So this is a Doc Race top mount turbo kit, and it is paired with an EFR 8374 turbo. And you might be wondering where you can find that kit, and the answer is you can't. This kit was discontinued shortly after I got it, which is pretty unfortunate because I think it was a really cool idea. So when this kit came out in 2020, one of the big challenges with going to a full frame turbo is that you had to delete the factory wastegate control. On the B58, we have an electronic wastegate, whereas most full frame turbos use external wastegates that are controlled with a pneumatic control system. So you're not really able to control that with the factory electronic wastegate, so it required ditching it, disabling a bunch of features in your tune, using an aftermarket boost controller, and I wasn't a big fan of that at the time. So the big advantage with this kit is the EFR turbo is internally gated, and with a simple adapter bracket, you're able to move your electronic wastegate from the stock turbo to the EFR and control it just like stock. So literally I could flash a stock tune on this car and it would run perfectly fine. No drivetrain malfunctions or anything like that. It would work just like a stock turbo. So that was something that attracted me initially. I was looking at hybrid turbo options, but when I saw that this was a way to control it just like stock and still get the upgraded top mount turbo look and performance, I was instantly sold. So I reached out to Doc Race. He agreed to partially sponsor my build and got me the turbo kit. So a big thank you to him for trusting me to make all these videos and help you guys answer your questions. Now, after that, the process was pretty slow, I will admit. I think it took me almost 3 months from getting the parts to actually getting everything installed. The first thing I did was get everything coded at a local company, and the reason is because with the top mount turbo kit, I felt like one of the biggest risks was having all of that heat right by the valve cover, and I didn't want it to damage anything. So I got all the hot parts coded to help reduce how much heat would transfer to the cylinder head and the valve cover and, you know, the coil packs, all the electronics that are there. So hopefully that would help extend its life. Then it took me several weeks to get everything installed. I think it took about 3 weeks in total. There weren't really a lot of DIYs out there on upgrading your turbo, so you didn't really have easy guides to find, and that was a part of the motivation I had to make my guide to show people how to, you know, swap your stock turbo or install a top mount. But went ahead, used my gut and my previous experience and kind of figured it all out. So overall, it wasn't a terrible install. If I were to do it again, of course, it would take a lot less time, but it did take me a lot of time initially. But I still was really excited to go with this because, like I mentioned, it's easier than installing a bottom mount turbo, and it's a lot easier to maintain and upgrade if you need to inspect things or change it in the future. And that ended up becoming very real for me because over the next several months, I was constantly chasing exhaust leaks. Looking at it now, I feel like a big reason for that and having all those issues was because I coated the exhaust manifold, but I did not remachine the flanges. So I feel like they probably just weren't perfectly flat and the gaskets weren't really doing their job. I think about maybe a month after installing the kit, I started noticing issues and I checked the turbo and realized the bolt had backed off and the turbo gasket had blown out. So I replaced that, and then a couple weeks later, I started having issues again, realized the gasket blew out again. So it took me a while to figure that out. And then after I got that sorted, I started having misfires and realized I blew out the other gasket that mates it up to the cylinder head. So at that point, I pulled the entire manifold off, brought it to a machine shop to get everything just flattened and make it perfectly true. And then after reinstalling that with new gaskets, everything has been problem-free ever since. So one, make sure you get all of the flanges machined. Even if they say they're flat and the coating's really thin, just make sure you get them all perfectly flat so you don't have those problems. And two, I definitely don't regret going this route, because if I had to keep taking the turbo on and off with a bottom mount kit, it would have been a much bigger headache. But through that process, I was able to test a lot of stuff. So like I tested it on off-the-shelf maps just to see if it worked, because that was one of the big selling points, right? And fortunately it did. I was able to test it on like a regular pump gas map. Then I ran it on E30. At the time I only had a TU pump, so we weren't really sure if it would handle it, but it handled it perfectly fine. Then I went ahead and started tuning with Odin Tuned. And again, a big shout out to him for taking all of the abuse I was giving him. I really just wanted to test a lot of different stuff as I was upgrading the kit instead of just throwing everything at it. And he played ball with me, which I really do appreciate, going through countless revisions to truly find the limits of every part of the system before making a change. So we tuned the car. I think we ended up around E35 with just the TU pump. Pushed that to its limits. Then I upgraded to a Dorch Stage 2, ran that on E40, pushed that. Then eventually I wanted to start running fully 85. I got tired of calculating mixes, so we added the Precision Raceworks port injection plate, and then eventually upgraded that to the RK AutoWorks intake manifold and paired that with a Fuel-It low pressure fuel pump that now I have replaced with an RK Tunes plug and play low pressure fuel pump. So gone through a lot of different revisions of this setup, and all of that said, the final horsepower figure is around 650 wheel horsepower. The last dyno I did was around, I think, 630 or 640, but that was when I just had the Dorch Stage 2. We never re-dynoed it after I added port injection and switched to full E85. And with the upgraded intake manifold, we anticipate it's making a little more power. So usually I just tell people 600, that's a safe bet, but I would estimate it's probably around 650. The funny thing is, when you look at the kit, you really can't tell, right? And I used to joke with people and say my car will look exactly the same whether it's making 500 horsepower on 93 octane or 1200 horsepower on a max effort setup. And that's one of the cool things about a top mount kit. It looks really cool, sounds really great, and you can adjust it to whatever your preference is. You can grow into the kit, add more, parts and stuff, and build it up to do exactly what you want. So again, another reason why I absolutely do not regret this kit, even though I'm not making crazy horsepower like a lot of people assume I'm making 1,000 horsepower, I'm still very satisfied with my decision. Now, with that being said, I can't say I don't have any regrets. There are definitely some things I would change. One is I do wish I went with the 8474 turbo. The 8374 was the smallest B2 frame EFR that fit this turbo kit, and I knew I wasn't shooting for crazy horsepower, so I picked that one for better spool and stuff like that. But I feel like the 8474 would have been a much better option. It was brand new at the time, so I really hadn't considered it, but it's capable of like 200 more horsepower, and it should spool pretty much the same. It just has an upgraded blade design so that it's more efficient than the 8374. So that would have been really nice, but ultimately, since you can't even get that now, people always ask me what would I do if I got a Doc Race turbo, and I can't lie, I know it's like the cookie cutter default answer, but I would just get whatever the newest 6870 is on the market. And it's funny because they were such big turbos and people were so concerned about spool and stuff, but I try to remind people you don't hear folks going from a bigger turbo to a smaller turbo. Once you drive these cars, you realize they make power effortlessly. The spool isn't really that bad, and it's something that's super manageable even around town. So I don't tell people to go for the smallest turbo. What I usually recommend is going with a turbo that will make the power you're looking for and do it as efficiently as possible. Once you're behind the wheel, you're not going to notice 200 RPM of extra lag or delay. I do think that the 6870 spools extremely quickly for the power that it makes, and that's one of the reasons why I would go that route, and they continue to innovate them, so they just get better and better. Even though it's rated again for over 1,000 horsepower, it probably spools just like my turbo that's rated for 750. So yeah, if I were to do it again, that's pretty much what I would do. I would get a Precision next gen 6870, or if they come out with a newer one tomorrow, just get that one and you know it's going to work and do what you want it to do, and just kind of enjoy it. I mean, I am still limited in my current setup because with the manual transmission, the transmission itself is limited. It can't make crazy amounts of power, and there are no real upgrade options to build it. The only thing you can do is like a $10,000 T56 swap, which I'm not quite ready to make that kind of investment yet. And even with my clutch, I'm only running a 550i clutch from like an F10 550i, and it's not designed to handle crazy horsepower. It's not like a twin disc clutch with a single mass flywheel and all that stuff. So that's why we keep torque limited to around 600 foot-pounds, and then just kind of let the power carry and do whatever it does. So I will say, from a performance standpoint, it could definitely do a lot more, but I'm not mad about it. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I enjoy it for what it is. It's a really fun, balanced setup. Still does great on street tires. I'm not just doing burnouts everywhere. It really just is a really satisfying option and the perfect option for me. Like I said, the only thing I might change if I were to do it again is to go with a more capable turbo. Even with like a Precision 6870, that's a lot less risky now because we've got motive reflex boost control, we've got MHD plus, all of these things that still maintain all the safeties you're concerned about, even when using a turbo that uses external wastegates. So I wouldn't even second guess it like on a modern setup for your B58. I think it would do exactly what most people want it to do. Again, even if you're just driving it daily and having fun on the street. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully that answers your questions. I don't think I've done a single video where I told my full story and experience. So hopefully this helps you guys out. If you're considering going this route, let me know if you're considering anything else or what you're comparing this with. Of course, as always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But for now, I think that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.